Welcome to Tech Leadership Talks, the podcast that brings you advice, insights, and knowledge from industry leaders and experts on how to navigate managing in a technical field. Tech Leadership Talks is brought to you by Texas A&M University's Master of Engineering and Technical Management, an online graduate program that trains industry professionals for leadership positions. I'm Katie, METM's digital marketer and your host for this episode. In today's episode, I'm talking to Mike Speed. Not only does he have a bachelor's, master's, and PhD in industrial engineering, but he is also a practicing lawyer. Today, we are discussing the current state of AI from a legal standpoint. I'm really excited about our subject. When you sent it to me, I was like, ooh, I've wanted to know about this ever since AIs emerged, become popular. Before we get into it, though, can you give me a little bit about your background?
I got a degree in industrial engineering, was hired as a civilian by the Air Force, went and got a graduate degree and a PhD in industrial and systems engineering. Was working for the Air Force and decided I didn't want to do that. And I went to law school at Ohio State University and became a lawyer. And since 2002, I've been practicing intellectual property law at a small firm here in Columbus, Ohio. I primarily do litigation, which is enforcement of patents, copyrights, trademarks, covenants not to compete, trade secrets, those kind of things. I've had people that approached me and said, I want to copyright something I used AI for, and I try to tell them, I don't think that's going to happen, but we're still in flux. There's a lot of litigation on various aspects of all of this, and a lot of people are talking about it in my business. So I thought, well, you threw out an idea, let's see what we can talk about.
And I feel like it's just in the past year, it's really gotten popular. I was a high school teacher for 6 years before I took this job. And so my last month was last June. And right kind of in my last semester of teaching, I was an high school English teacher. It started coming up because we were like, the students can use ChatGPT to write their papers now. We're not prepared to catch it and teach around it or use it to teach. We haven't had the training. And so it just seems like all of a sudden it's just like popped up everywhere. I went to a marketing conference in November and all the classes were on how to use AI to help you, whether that be to give you like a first draft or something, to give you prompts, to give you ideas for content creation. And so it's just suddenly it's like, okay, well, and then one person at the conference was like, I always say helped by AI or assisted by AI. And then some people didn't mention doing that. And so it's I feel like it's hitting every industry, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And no one knows exactly what the rules are around it, if there's rules around it right now. So right. I am interested to hear what you have to say about all of that.
Yeah. So, I guess where should we start? I'm not an expert on how these chatbots work. But I can tell from what I understand is they are very sophisticated search tools that have, prior to their launch, based on beta testing and beta users, as well as their own users, have scraped information across the internet and created these databases, if you will, and sorted that data in a way that makes it, if you use prompts in a certain way, it will break that prompt up in what I think they call tokens, and then they can do searching and find, and then come up with a solution. It's way more sophisticated than what we've seen, but it's not necessarily completely new. We've had the ability in Microsoft Word, for example, it'll finish a sentence for you. And it's been able to do that for a number of years. Or when you're texting, it'll finish a sentence. Swipe right to finish. And it knows what should go where because of your either speech pattern or patterns of speech from other people. And so that kind of learning on that basis. So from what I understand, it uses the web, it uses third-party sites, it uses people's own searching and results, and it continues to build the information that it has. I've been on ChatGPT a few times, have not tried to stump it. I'm sure there's probably some information it doesn't know. So it's not going to go anywhere. We know that.
Okay.
I think I've talked to some other folks that were teachers. Some school districts around the country are embracing it. This is a tool now that people are going to use, and they're going to use it to write papers. They're going to use it to write letters. They're going to use it to write emails, and to try to put the cat in the bag, back in the bag, so to speak, is going to be impossible. There's always going to be the ethical issue, whether or not AI generated, AI assisted, how are you going to grade that? Kind of out of the scope of my knowledge, and I know a lot of folks in your former business are talking about that. But what I'm focused on is two things, and it's on both sides of the equation, so to speak. One is I'm a user of ChatGPT or some of the other chatbots, and I'm creating content. To what extent can I, primarily in the copyright world, protect that content? You could probably extend that question to, if I use ChatGPT to help me create an invention, can I become the inventor of that particular product or apparatus? And so what I will tell you is, right now, the state of law, at least with respect to the patent side, is we don't know. So there was a case that came out a couple of years ago, I think Thaler versus Bedell. It's the person in charge of the patent office. So in that particular case, the alleged inventor, the human inventor, actually wanted to name the AI program as the inventor.
Mm-hmm.
And it got to the Federal Circuit Court of Appeals, which is the specialized circuit that does patent cases. So it went through the patent office and went through district court, got to the Federal Circuit Court of Appeals. Our Constitution says that inventors are entitled to patents. And through statutory interpretation, the Federal Circuit says an inventor has to be a human, cannot be a machine.
Okay.
So it answered at least a very limited question, that you can't use, or you can't have AI be known as the inventor on a patent application. It did not answer the question, and did not even try to answer the question. It says we are not answering the question. To what extent can someone patent something, Mike Speed, for example, ChatGPT, to help create an invention or to write a patent application? And that answer has not been litigated, as far as I understand. So we're going to wait and see how and to what extent AI is going to be used, but I know it's already there.
Right.
I know that I can have ChatGPT with certain prompts, creative prompts, help me draft a patent application. Now it's still kind of, is it my idea? More than likely, I still have to feed it what my thoughts are, but I can help me write it. There's no obligation, at least I know right now in the patent office, where you have to say, I used AI to help to write this, so to speak, just like you don't have to say, I use Microsoft Word to help me write this. So we don't know what the answer is going to be in terms of AI-assisted inventions and patent. And that's the United States. So, every country that has a patent system, which most of them do, are going to have to grapple with the questions themselves. So we'll see where it all's going to wash out in terms of the patent space.
Yeah. If it was to become a thing where AI does own patents, is the AI owning it, or does the person who used the AI own it, do you think?
I don't think AI would ever own it.
Right.
I mean, because but AI would be the inventor, but the owner would be the person that used the AI to do it. But that begs the question, right? Patents are very powerful at times.
Right.
Piece of paper. It's a contract between you and the government of the United States that gives you a monopoly in terms of being able to exclude others from making, using, selling, or offering to sell a product for 20 years. And that can be very powerful. Especially with pharmaceuticals and modern communication, technology, and modern computing science, modern cybersecurity. All of that can be very powerful for the person that has monopoly to exclude others and be able to, if you will, exploit, for lack of better words, the fact that they own it and charge more money.
Right.
Or if they want someone else to use it, they can get a license and force someone to pay them a royalty to use the patented technology. Right. So it's never going to be owned by the AI per se, but the AI helps produce it. But I'm concerned that, some AI tool could be sophisticated enough to go through the patent office, look at recently issued patents, and because patents are always incremental based upon what went before, right? So they'll take whatever invention, and then all of a sudden now they're going to combine, 3 or 4 patents that came out in a certain space, and this is now a new invention, and very little human inventiveness, if you will, came into it. So that concerns me, but I think I'm certain there's probably some people that have tried that
I'm
with
sure.
these tools. Yeah. And like I said, right now there's no obligation when you sign a declaration that says I am the inventor, but there's no obligation that says I had used or did use or did not use AI assistance.
Right.
And I don't know if they'll ever require that, but they might.
Yeah.
So we'll see on the patent side.
Do you know if it's the same for copyright law?
So copyright law is also very hot and heavy in terms of what's going on there. And there's some guidance from the Copyright Office. Let me see if I can share my screen. This might be easier. Do you see this where it says United States Copyright Office?
Yep.
Okay, so they came out with this last year, February, about a year ago, this ruling in basically a comic book, if you will. It was called Zero the Dawn, and the author wanted a copyright on this AI created work, as well as the layout and then some of the writing. And I won't give you the whole thing, but basically the Copyright Office says, well, they originally said, we're going to give you the copyright. And then they went back and said, well, we're rethinking it. We're going to give you a copyright on this layout because you laid it out in a certain way. And we're going to give you copyright on the story, okay? But the pictures themselves were all generated through AI according to the author. And because of that, we're not going to give you copyright on the individual pictures. So they modified the registration. And so kind of left, okay, well, we're using this as kind of a guide. It's kind of like left a standard that if you're going to try to get something copyrighted that is completely AI generated, you're probably not going to get it. If you're using some AI generated content along with other content that's not AI generated, and you're creating an arrangement as well as maybe some writing, maybe the whole thing can be done. And so if you were to, let's just play around with ChatGPT real quick. We create a blue glass sphere. Okay, now create a red see-through pyramid.
And for the audio, he's typing this into ChatGPT and it is creating these images.
Yeah. So now now these two have been created. They're actually kind of neat. So now if I write a story about these two shapes somehow,
right,
I could probably copyright,
the story
on this story about, one transformed into the other, or two aliens came down, and this was what one ship looked like and the other ship looked like, even though these pictures themselves are AI generated and not subject to copyright, but there's a lot I could do with them. Or I could combine them somehow, in say a video editor or a photo editor and make my own art. And I would probably, with that combination, be able to use them. But as it stands right now, the individual pictures are not. But if I were able to, like I said, write a story, that could be copyrightable. So
there's human touch to that.
Yeah. But we're just scratching the surface. I mean, we're going to see a lot of stuff in the future, about what's copyrightable, what's not copyrightable here. And this is just the one side of the equation that is getting discussed in terms of the users of ChatGPT or other chatbots creating content. And, you can go on YouTube now and they'll teach you how to write a novel with ChatGPT or how to write a nonfiction book with ChatGPT. I'm sure that Amazon self-publishing is probably getting filled with those kind of
AI generated
content. Unfortunately or fortunately, this is the future. And I think you're going to see more and more content, both fiction and nonfiction, be written this way. At the end of the day, are we all going to lose our imagination to a machine? Perhaps we are, perhaps we're not, but we'll see. So we've talked about the one side of the equation, and that is, can I get protection from artificial intelligence assisted or made content, either patent or copyright. The third area, typically, the trifecta of intellectual property is branding and trademarks. I don't think these issues come up with as much in trademarks or branding because that's related to sales of products. So using AI to help you, come up with a cute symbol for your product, there's probably nothing wrong with that. Let's say you like Maltese dogs, right? And so you have a clothing design, you want to come Maltese design. So you go to ChatGPT, type in, give me a picture of a Maltese, and it will do that. And then you turn around and use that as a trademark. There's no harm, no foul.
Right.
So that issue is not going to be a problem. So that's the one side of the equation. The other side of the equation is just about as interesting, and it's getting a lot of press these days, and that is, where is the information coming from? How is it being used by ChatGPT or chatbots or the image? And are they using other people's copyrighted content to answer the prompt?
Right.
And so the New York Times is suing in a fairly well-known case. They're suing Microsoft and OpenAI. George R.R. Martin of Game of Thrones is suing, and other authors.
The really publicized one that happened recently was the actors and writers strike in Hollywood.
Right.
And they were trying to prevent people using their likeness.
Right. Yep. George Carlin State is suing for someone that used AI to create a fake comedy special. And so there is going to be some significant rulings in that space coming in the next 2 or 3 years about how far can they go? So in terms of fundamentally, a fact cannot be copyrighted. So if I were to put in ChatGPT, tell me the history of Kyle Field at Texas A&M, the facts associated with that is what it is. I can go to Wikipedia and read the same thing. If ChatGPT were to regurgitate an article that someone wrote about the architecture of Kyle Field in College Station in a book that the person authored and regurgitated that word for word, that'd be a copyright violation. But I don't think ChatGPT is doing that. I think what it's doing, it's scraping information from a variety of sources,
right, and
using the aggregate of those sources plus the prompts and responses that it's been getting and the way it does the searching to output its findings, if you will.
Right.
And then the other issue is, let's take the example. If you were to say, give me an architectural description of Kyle Field, and they went to an architecture book that someone authored and verbatim copied that and gave that to you, and then you turn around and put that in a publication, you should be liable for copyright infringement as well as ChatGPT, because you're copyrighting someone else. So you don't have to know it's copyrighted. There's a strict liability.
Right.
So ChatGPT is aware of that. They don't want to get sued by their users, so they're trying to give you some protection. And I think their primary argument against the New York Times, against the actors, is this is fair use. We're using the facts that exist in the netherworld, computer land, and we're aggregating all of these data together to come up with responses. And we're not regurgitating and we're not providing exact, quotations back. I mean, the fact that, a newspaper article wrote about 9/11 doesn't make 9/11 the property of that newspaper article. My limited experience, I think that the better argument is going to be fair use. Now, there will probably be some exceptions, maybe some ChatGPT or chatbots, not ChatGPT, are doing more copying verbatim instead of not verbatim. And so, it could be that some win and some lose. But I think as a general proposition, that probably is going to be fair use.
So do you think, for people who are listening to this, who are people who lead technical teams, whether it's at an organization, a national lab, whichever, how would you advise them to approach AI in their own work, and how should they advise the people who work for them? You wouldn't discourage at this point?
No, absolutely. I wouldn't discourage it at all. I would absolutely engage in the conversation. How would I advise even my clients? And then in terms of, I wouldn't discourage anybody from using ChatGPT to assist them in writing and creating content. I would tell them that there are risks that you might be using someone else's copyrighted material. You just need to be cognizant of that. If something sounds like it's just very, very well written poetry, etc., you might be able to pick up that, someone else may have written this first.
Right.
The more you stick to the facts, it's very hard that you'd be infringing someone's copyright. The more color commentary that's provided about things, the more you might be getting into the space where someone else did it first. But in terms of the tool, I think it's a tool that's here. I don't think it's going away. I mean, I think there might be some constraints with these New York Times lawsuits and these author lawsuits that comes out, that we might see some pushback, if you will. But I mean, I think our high school kids and our college kids in the next 10 years are going to be masters at this.
Yeah, it's a tool. It's a new tool for them.
And so I think we all have to embrace it. There's lawyers out here doing seminars on how we can use it to help us make our lives more efficient. It's a tool that if you are relying on for facts, it's the same thing, right? So back in the day, you went to the library, you got Encyclopedia Britannica, you went through and found the subject, and maybe then you got deeper after that. Now we don't have hard-written encyclopedias anymore. You can go to Wikipedia. Right. Wikipedia has lots of problems because it was open source completely. I think maybe they backed off on that some in terms of anybody could edit, but you have to, you can't trust everything that's on Wikipedia. Right. However, that being said, this is what I tell my students, it's a great place to start. It is a very good place to start, especially if you're looking at a case, the Volkswagen jurisdiction case. You could type that into Wikipedia. It's going to give you a summary of it. And then it'll probably give you some references to some, third-party commentary that's even more, it'll give you probably a reference to the actual decision. It's Wikipedia is here to stay. It's a good place to start. Every high school kid uses it in terms of term papers. Every college kid uses it in terms of term paper. Now, maybe the professors and the teachers don't want you to cite Wikipedia. I have mixed feelings on that. It's a source. I would prefer you cite the site that Wikipedia cites for the reference and go find it, but that's being done. Right. And I think this is the next thing. This is the next Wikipedia. But this is even more powerful because not only does it give you the information, it writes it for you. It solves it for you. The downside of this, like we said, though, the creativity of the individual might go down. Right. Or the creativity is going to go in a different direction. Everybody would love to have a book on the shelf with their name on it, a novel. But do you truly want a bunch of novels out there that were written based upon I'm better prompter than you, right? As opposed to I'm a better writer. So I think the law is in flux on both sides of this equation, and it's going to be interesting over the next 3 to 5 years to see how this washes out. But I do believe this is here to stay, and I'm never going to discourage anybody from using the new tool. I mean, the reality is, if someone generated the next series of novels that was as well read as Game of Thrones using AI, that publisher is not going to turn their nose at it because that's a lot of money. Now, whether or not that person's AI generated novel is ultimately protected by copyright, maybe not. Okay, so you create a space, so you build a space and create characters in that world, and you get the first to produce it and everybody likes it, and then you got all this fan fiction that follows. Okay, so what? Yeah. You were still the first and everybody's going to read your book first. There will be in probably the next 5 years some major work of literature, or at least work of fiction, if you don't want to call it literature. I guarantee that's going to happen, and that author may or may not say they did it with AI assistance. That author may not even name themselves as the author. And maybe a pseudonym for all we know. So the long answer to the short question, I would encourage, but to the extent you're using, these to support your facts, you got to verify, just like you would on anything, and recognize that if it does copy someone's content and you use it in a way that is beneficial for your business as opposed to fair use, you might have some trouble. I think we've only just begun, so to speak.
Dipped our toes into a sea of something.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to see how this all washes out, Dean.
Thank you for listening in to today's episode. Tech Leadership Talks is brought to you by Texas A&M University's Master of Engineering Technical Management. To learn more, visit metm.tamu.edu.